In an effort to stabilize the economy and support those that have been impacted the most by the corona pandemic, Washington last week passed what is being called the CARES Act, which stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Now, while we won't cover every aspect of this more than 800-page bill, we wanted to summarize the portion of the near $2 trillion in stimulus that we think will have the greatest impact to employers and employees. First, let's start with employers. Now, there's a lot of the bill set aside for larger corporations, but for purposes of this outline, we're going to specifically focus on what is available to small businesses. Now, first and foremost, let's classify what the government has determined to be a small business for purposes of the stimulus that's available in this package. They define small businesses as those that employ 500 employees or fewer. Okay. Now we're waiting for specific clarification of what time frame those 500 employees must have been employed or averaged, but that is the determining factor of whether or not an employer is considered to be a small business. Now, what Congress has done is set aside roughly $367 billion in funds to be provided as loans. The loans have an interest rate of roughly 3.75% for for-profit organizations, and roughly 2.75% for nonprofits. And payments, return payments for these loans can be stretched over 30 years. And these loans will be available until June 30th of this year. Now, there's a portion of the bill that talks about how the loans can be either forgivable or in effect become grants. Now, this is done on an approved basis, but it does require that employers maintain the average size of its full-time workforce based on when the loan itself was received. So that therein lies the big kind of catch for the loan to become a grant or forgivable, is that if you're an employer at the time when you receive the funds, you have to maintain that average full-time staff. Now, in addition, for small businesses that see their gross receipts fall by at least 50% from the previous year, they'll be able be eligible rather for a tax credit of up to 50% of the wages that they pay out during the coronavirus crisis. And this is also predicated on the fact that they keep their staff employed. So if you are willing to keep your staff employed, if you see your gross receipts fall by 50%, then you can actually receive an additional tax credit of 50% of the wages that you pay out during that time. Now, for employers with fewer than 100 employees, they actually could receive a tax credit of up to 100% of the wages paid. So this is a significant benefit to small business employers that employ less than 500 employees, but specifically those with less than 100 employees, assuming that you keep your employees staffed and on the payroll. Now, to qualify or apply for one of these loans, you have to go to the SBA, the Small Business Administration. Now, obviously, they're expecting that the SBA's response time is going to be rather slow, but they are estimating right now that you should receive responses within 2 to 3 weeks. But that is effectively how the large portion of the small business stimulus is going to be applied. Now, let's shift our gears and talk about individuals. Now, within the stimulus, there were also funds set aside to go directly to the American public. Now, the amounts available are up to $1,200 per individual adult, $2,400 for married couples, and then $500 per child. Now, the benefits are somewhat limited based on your overall household income. So, and they're going to use the 2019 tax return to determine this. If you haven't filed your tax return yet, then they will utilize your 2018 return. Okay, but the benefits are going to be calculated as such. If you are an individual reporting up to $75,000 of that's adjusted gross income, you'll receive 100% of the benefit of the stimulus. So individuals up to $75,000 in adjusted gross income will receive $1,200. Married couples up to $150,000 of adjusted gross income combined would receive $2,400. And then again, for families, it's $500 per child. Now, the amount of benefits payable will start to phase out or scale down if you're an individual that makes more than $75,000 in adjusted gross income. So it's kind of a scale for every amount of every bit over that, and it completely phases out at $99,000. So between $75,000 and $99,000 for an individual, you're going to see the $1,200 start to scale down. For married couples, then that starts to phase out or scale down over $150,000 and is completely unavailable if you had over $198,000 of adjusted gross income. Again, this is based on your 2019 return. If you haven't filed a 2019 return, then they're going to use your 2018 numbers to make their determination. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting in how those funds are going to be available to you and why you may want to pay attention to this, because this is automatic. You don't have to go file for it or request it. It's all about how you filed and received your tax refund in your last one. So if you've already filed your 2019 tax return, however you asked the IRS to give you your refund, if you received one, that's how they're going to disperse these funds. So if it was in direct deposit, then that's how they're going to give you the funds. If you asked to mail a check, then that's how they're going to give you the funds. Now, here's what you need to be aware. If your bank account has changed or your address has changed since you filed that return, or if you haven't filed a 2019 return and they're going to use your 2018 return, if your bank account or address has changed since then. So it's very important that if before these checks go out, that you update the IRS on your bank account information or physical address if those have changed since the last time you filed a return or received your refund. The IRS is going to send those funds directly to you, again, so you want to make sure that you update those things. And finally, we want to make sure we address an additional stimulus expansion for unemployed persons. So the stimulus provides for expanded unemployment insurance benefits. And so what that means is that there's an additional $600 per week over and above current unemployment benefits that are going to be available to American citizens that find themselves unemployed. Now, these extended benefits are going to last for up to 13 weeks over the normal unemployment benefit duration. And so you get $600 per week. There's an extended benefits for an additional 13 weeks over the unemployment benefit duration, which in most states is 26 weeks. Remember that each state governs its own unemployment insurance program. So it's important that depending on which state you live in, that you understand and follow each specific state guidelines on how much benefit you receive. You also want to go to your state unemployment insurance facility or utilize the resources to file unemployment specific to your state. So again, small business employers, there's a lot of money set aside to help support you specifically if you keep your employees employed. So there's loans available. Those loans can become grants or so long as you keep your people employed. For individuals, there is stimulus money depending on your adjusted gross income. And then for the unemployed, there's an additional unemployment benefit of up to $600 a week. And there's an expanded or extended benefit period for which you would receive unemployment benefits. For the latest in what's going on in Washington and the coronavirus, please stay tuned to GDP Advisors as we will work to keep you updated as things develop. Thank you so much.